Hello, everybody. Welcome to our WAN-IFRA webinar series. I'm your host today, Nicole Frankenhauser, and I'm based in our Frankfurt, Germany WAN-IFRA office. And I'm working for the Global Advisory team, so we're very happy today to bring you a webinar featuring one of our WAN-IFRA Global Advisory Consultants. On behalf of our team, Luc Rademakers is here to bring to you today a webinar called Publishers, How Should You Invest in and Create a Future-Proof Business Environment? We invite the audience to join us in this discussion. So once Luc concludes his presentation, we will begin our question and answers session. To submit your questions, please search for, at the bottom right of your control panel, a box that is labeled questions. Anytime during Luc's presentation, you can type in your question, and once Luc concludes his presentation, we will begin the Q&A round. Your panelists today, that includes myself. I'm the advisory coordinator for WAN-IFRA Global Advisory, and a little bit more about Luc. He is the co-founder of the national newspaper Metro Belgium. He was also managing director of 2 regional newspapers and managing director of news and sports at VRT. Luc has an extensive track record in developing innovative revenue models with newsroom, marketing, sales, digital, and retail teams. He now advises media companies globally on new strategies and transformation as a digital expert on behalf of WAN-IFRA Global Advisory. And I also don't want to forget to mention our upcoming WAN-IFRA events. We hope to see you in Durban, South Africa. We're going to be there June 7th through the 9th. And this year we're bringing together CEOs, chief editors, advertising executives from news publishers and startups from all over the world, where they will listen to energizing sessions and network among their peers. Tickets are still available, and I have the website listed in case you still want to get your ticket. And then next, for the webinar attendees, I thought that perhaps the new Digital Business Study Tour would be of interest for some of you. For more information on this 100% focused revenue tour to the United States in October, please contact me directly for more information or see the website I've listed here. And now, without further ado, I'd like to formally introduce Luc Rademakers, who will be presenting to you on how you should invest in and create a future-proof business environment. Luc, we look forward to your presentation. Take it away.
Thank you, Nicole. Hi, everyone. Yeah. Do you have my screen?
I have your screen. We're watching it.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Nice to have you attend this WAN-IFRA webinar on how to invest and create a future-proof business environment. I just click this away. Okay. So before I start, let me briefly tell you a few facts about my background. The past 25 years, I've worked for 4 different media companies in Belgium on different platforms like national television, national and regional newspapers, digital and radio. In those media companies, we have integrated, separated newsrooms and production workflows into one single newsroom and production workflow. We have created multimedia sales and marketing proposals for print, digital, TV, and radio. And I've worked for different audiences, national, regional, hyperlocal audiences, and the so-called verticals. Identify key strategic habits of the media consumer, and in relation to these findings, instill the necessary change organization are the brickstones of my experience. My fields of expertise are coaching executives and management in transformation processes and creating cross-department business models. The findings I've gathered in my experience of leading constantly innovating media companies can be of interest to managers. Let's begin with a quick tour. In this webinar, I will discuss 4 major themes in managing your business. First, I'll explain how you can take advantage of disruptions in other industries than yours, how to react in front of business disruptions. Second, I'll discuss why a clear brand policy is important before you decide to innovate. What is the position of your media brand? Next, I'll explain why you should never forget to respect history, even when you embrace the future. How to conciliate old and new. And finally, the crucial point of success strategy. Take advantage of other disruptions. How should you best react in front of business disruptions? I will start with a message that can be useful when you enter into discussions with colleagues you definitely know and with whom you need to collaborate. Remember that there is no need to feel alone in front of major changes, even in the most difficult moments. These days, transformation is definitely a buzz in media industry. Nevertheless, here is neither in history nor across diverse economic activities a reason to believe that the position of media companies is unique. Every industry is facing more or less similar transformation challenges, and almost every industry, even the service industry, is often overwhelmed by rapid changes in technology, by evolving consumer behavior, or environmental influences. Think about prior disruptive changes in the media industry. The media business managed quite well the introduction of disrupting changes like the launch of radio and television a few decades ago. So why would digital media and social communication tools make us more uncertain about the future than needed? New developments will continue to appear. Get used to the idea that change has no endpoint. And to cope with change, try to learn from good and bad stories. Consider disruptive changes in other industries. I often use the following example of how you could have taken good or bad decisions in the 20th century, depending on the right focus. Here you see a stove. Stove production centers and factories did good business until this appeared, the central heating system. A new business was created around this new instrument. And only a decade ago, we saw these shining plates appear on rooftops, in gardens and elsewhere, panels for solar energy. If several decades ago, you thought that your stove business was safe, you're probably dead by now. If you understood, what few did, that you were not selling stoves or central heating systems, but distribution of warmth and energy, you are probably still in business and maybe a market leader in a dominant position. It's important to always keep in mind that you are selling a service and not just a product. In other words, this is a perfect example of how businesses can fail because of outdated distribution channels. Modern strong brands, like this one in the car industry, like for example BMW, understand this paradigm shift very well. They are selling mobility, and for the time being, they need fuel-driven cars as an instrument to do so. But they are working on new manners of providing the same mobility service. With, for example, electric cars like the BMW i3, you see a picture of it over here, but also with their car-sharing platform DriveNow. Another example is Nestlé's communication about selling health. Nestlé is selling health, and to do so, you need food. What message do I want to bring with these examples? Take advantage of the power of disruptive technology. I experienced that media companies don't need a digital strategy. They need a strategy in a digital world, and that's something completely different. They don't need a stove and a central heating strategy. They need a warmth energy distribution strategy. A holistic strategic business approach offers a huge advantage to arrive at a clear and constant focus. So far with my first point on how solidly create a business strategy. My second key point for managing a business is be precise in the definition of the USP of your media brand. Start with a good, almost detailed understanding of the kind of business you're in. The etymologic origin of the word media is clear. When you are in media, you are operating in the middle. In other words, media are in the relationship business. And in the relationship business, it is definitely possible to shape the market. Media business is not about how to undergo the global declining interest for printed news in a way that is as painless as possible. There are always options to do things differently. Do not focus on the stove, but on the energy distribution. Be creative as an energy distributor. Seek alliances and mergers, invest and acquire. And in a 24 connected information society, you have different distribution platforms and endless possible touch points to improve the relationship with your clients. What service could you offer, unique and worthwhile paying for? Seek segmentation of your existing public audience with focus on retention and the creation of touch points for new clients. Gathering and analyzing big data brings a company much closer to the established or new client. Personalize your offer if it is worthwhile to do so. And don't forget to search for segmentation. That options that are logical for the consumer. Take new initiatives in which there is a sufficient fit with what you stand for. And there are many possible segmentation domains that are interesting to look at. Business, sports, momentums of emotional ups and downs in people's life. And from cradle to grave, multiple business opportunities can really be explored. Maybe there are self-identifying interests of your media consumers you didn't work on yet. But whatever initiative you choose, try to be a natural and essential part of the emotional highlights in your client's life. Even in 2017, a newspaper and digital obituary still holds value for families and readers alike. Newspaper The World in Oregon started, for example, with the first monthly edition in January 2017. To conclude, your media consumer and the power of the communities he belongs to should be the guideline of your decisions when exploring new possibilities of existing formats or selecting new initiatives. And that seems all obvious, but is often forgotten in daily decision making. And finally, start always with a digital platform, making a link with print if possible and added revenue. Let's move to my third point, respect what works and innovate on opportunities. What do I mean with how to respect the existing culture and how to create a future-proof environment? How to respect an existing culture. Each news brand will face varied traits and changes depending on location and circumstances. But being over-enthusiastic about successes abroad can cost you a lot of money. Do not blindly copy successes from others. So work tailor-made with respect for the history of your brand, of course, the social engagement with your brand, and the sales and marketing opportunities in the field. Okay, but how could you create a future-proof environment? Introduce a startup innovation model. That means testing before introducing and implementing new business models. Test your ideas. You have the public to do so. Create knowledge about what to do or not, and dare to kill your prior initiatives. Stop business without growth perspectives. Otherwise, you risk to stretch your management attention too much and again, lose money you could invest in a more powerful innovation. And to become successful in the new economic paradigm, with big data bringing in new intelligence, your media organization should not be segmented in parallel KPIs that needed to be achieved. A company divided into non-corresponding agendas with departments that want to continue cubicle working on products is no future-proof. So strengthen the relationships between the departments by sharing a part of their business objectives. And even more important, of course, is teamwork across departments. By installing real teamwork, the benefits for all divisions are tremendous. Involve your people and create together new concepts with a win for all. For salespeople will get great new sales offer opportunities, and even more important, an enthusiastic opener in their sales proposal discussions. Train your salespeople in offering innovative proposals and acting solution-oriented. Make salespeople better listeners. They don't need to talk to their clients, they need to create offers that answer clients' needs. And concerning marketing, they'll create enthusiasm for innovative initiatives in what's often new all-in content is so fun to make. For ITC, they will be proud to be lean and to contribute to a positive impact on revenue numbers. And do never forget, new people are coming in. You cannot ask this new generation to go backwards. Do not create a culture shock. Furthermore, try to close the gap between digital natives with attractive ideas, but no business awareness, and management or top management with an extreme bottom line focus and not sufficient time left to catch up with the newest technologies. Finally, be aware that today's new clients think and process information in a fundamentally different way from existing clients. Okay, if all this work is done well, you still need to align your media organization with the strategy. And the first hurdle you may face in your organization might be getting all departments on board regarding your new strategy. And this is definitely the most critical point in making changes and in making innovation work in a sustainable way. Be aware of the existence of social influence and the importance that to respond to peer or group pressure. Mostly managers are rather acting as group members and are not demonstrating braveness and innovation. But how to get the key decision makers involved? Most often the key decision makers are responsible for budget and resources. So without their buy-in, innovation risks to be suboptimal. Change must be openly supported, not only in a relatively safe environment of the executive meeting room. Make this support public and make this support brave. I've been in the lead of a number of major change projects on different media platforms. And in my experience, during change implementation, there are 3 domains that ask for constant attention. Everyone needs to support the same message and language. To introduce a plan to measure and share successes. And finally, don't forget the new leadership culture you need to become successful. Everyone the same language. To stop cultural barriers between departments, you will have to come up with a structure and plan for a new digital-first culture in operation. Since you are a media company, put content and editorial at the center. In the newsroom, avoid to sell what I should call fade news. News that is incomplete, insufficiently verified, or of little social importance and general interest. Consider fake news as an opportunity and fade news as a real threat for media companies. How to cope with these editorial issues is, of course, subject of another long debate. So let's go back to the domain of the one message, one voice strategy. Be clear and consequent in setting breakthrough goals. Media companies are, even more than other companies, highly sensitive in communication matters. Even when everyone gets the same message, the way the message is interpreted or translated in peer groups can be drastically different. You will have to repeat the message and to constantly check if the message has been correctly understood. Take your time to appropriately adapt existing resources. Finding the right people for each task is crucial. Innovation teams, especially when they operate in a startup concept, very often miss the link with the ongoing business and the cash cow that is in the middle of the boardroom stable. At the same time, it's the most important plus of working in a startup mode. They don't need to invest time in running the bigger daily business of the company. But when presenting their results and recommendations, innovation teams need to be sure that the management assimilates the presented insights. And never underestimate. Everyone in a company can act as an accelerator or as a negative influencer for change plans, and this from the bottom to the top. What about sharing successes? Share your goals, your action plans, and your timings with all business departments. Set the right expectations and check if they got correctly adopted. Transparency is critical in major change processes. Measure success and the progress of change, even if journalists in general don't like to quantify their journalistic work, since they attach a lot of importance to feelings and opinions. But how much time and energy is lost on discussions about feelings and opinions? Make optimal use of time. Do not create more pressure. Make better use of facts, figures, data, and context. That's extremely helpful in change processes in an emotional business like media business. And client engagement is key, of course. Be flexible in the change process. You will realize better involvement. And change is no bow and arrow game. Change is a line, a loop, a process, and insights and circumstances are dynamic during the change process. Do not kill them by being too straightforward. Then we come to the new leadership culture. Pay extra attention to the middle management. That can be squeezed between strategic pressure from the top and traditional ways of doing things on the work floor. Rethink and introduce new duties for the journalists. They need to think and to process information in a fundamentally different way. Let them redesign their roles. Convince them that finally they will become themselves future-proof in a tremendously challenging media environment. And I worked with two types of executives in every executive committee I was part of. Those who are absolutely risk averse, most often unconsciously, and those who are what I call risk blind, not able to analyze correctly the pros and the cons from implementing a new or extra service. Know that this is normal and cope with it. So invest in the development of decision-making talents. These decision-making talents are really crucial. Okay, so to wrap up, based on my long media change experience, I give you these 5 takeaways. First one, try to learn from disruptions in other businesses and don't ever feel alone in front of these changes. What works elsewhere does not necessarily work in your market. Copy-paste is never a good idea. Give room to startup models and dare to kill your prior initiatives. Strategic insights need strong managerial capacities for successful implementation. And finally, train your leaders and work with executives that are courageous, ambitious, and collaborative. Okay. Are there any questions?
All right, Luc. Well, thank you for an energizing presentation. We're now going to open the platform for questions. So audience, I encourage you to submit your questions. Again, bottom right of the control panel, just type in your question and just click send and I'll get it to Luc. But Luc, I have a few questions to start off with, so I'll get this going.
Okay.
The 5 takeaways that are listed here. You mentioned the importance of management and leadership if you eventually want to realize a successful future-proof media business. So in your experience,
yeah, exactly.
I know that you co-founded a national newspaper. You've also been a managing director. What priorities do media companies actually need to work on?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, in general, you see that strategic insights are openly shared in media businesses, and there are very little insights with copyright rules on behalf of these insights. But once these insights are gathered, many managers in media business need to find out how the insights and decisions should be introduced in the company. And clarifying the what is the first step, but implementing the how is the most important and definitely the most difficult. And once again, you need a tailor-made approach. I've never discovered two media companies that are completely the same. Mm-hmm. And building the best possible architecture for an organization is extremely important. And you absolutely need to work with decision-making people that have the skills and the experience to help you move forward. But unfortunately, we have not the time to go in detail about these skills for the decision-making people.
Sure. But thank you for that brief explanation. And then I'm just going to go again to this 5 takeaways page. Your third point is talking about giving room to startup models. How do you convince your management that investing in innovation and creating a startup culture in your newsroom, whether you're a large or small publisher, how can you convince upper management that that's critical for a sustainable business?
Well, in general, the daily business is so overwhelming that you don't have the time to do some free thinking, I should say, and you need absolutely to stimulate innovation and to have a mindset in your company that is open and that has the possibilities to take risks and to succeed and to failure. And it's very important to have that at the inside and not at the outside, so that you can have discussions that can offer you new opportunities in the market. Right,
because that could eventually lead to really good revenue streams. I think Axel Springer has a day of ideas once a year where everybody pitches some ideas for a new startup, and I think that's definitely something that you can actually copy and paste. So you can kind of take that to your newsroom and say, yeah, a day of ideas, that sounds pretty good. Maybe we'll find some new revenue that way. Okay, and I have another question that you had mentioned earlier. We were talking about the importance of middle management in media and their involvement in change processes and the fact that they feel squeezed. You use the term squeezed. In what ways can top management support the middle management during transformation?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and middle management is often forgotten in change process. And in my experience, the middle management is indeed very, very often in a sandwich position. And since media business is perceived as an emotional business, leadership roles are less attractive and less popular. And most people want to be part of the family on the floor, and making decisions doesn't make you automatically more popular. And in my opinion, both the traditional vertical pipeline structure and the matrix organization structure are not well adapted to what media companies in continuous transformation really need. What's key to discover is how a media company functions in day-to-day decision making. And every company has its own decision culture. And I would start with decoding and analyzing this culture. And middle managers need to find out that making these kind of important decisions is much more fun than the feeling to be squeezed.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we have a very insightful question from an audience member, so I'll go into that now. You spoke earlier about KPIs. So how do you properly set them in an organization where team collaboration is also the new mantra?
Well, it's important, of course, that you don't deconstruct what you achieved before. So you don't need to turn over every KPI that you have in your company, but it can be very interesting to, for example, have a personal KPI of 80% of personal for your division, 80% and 20% of shared KPIs, and that stimulates absolutely collaboration between the different departments. And finally, it will be more easy than before to realize your proper KPIs, because you have new opportunities and there's less more negative energy in the company.
Yeah, so there has to be a balance between being intrinsically motivated and also being motivated by your team, and all working together
exactly.
towards a goal for the company.
Exactly.
I have another question just on behalf of our WAN-IFRA members. WAN-IFRA represents many small to mid-sized publishers. And so what are some first steps that they can take to start future-proofing their business starting now, like today? So if they didn't have a significant budget reserved or set aside for something like this, what initial steps could they take that don't require a huge amount of resources?
Well, the most important thing to start with is the mindset. Be optimistic about the future, and try to develop new initiatives, adapt your organization, try to create an organization that can stimulate initiatives in the future, and that is an organization that is well adapted for the ongoing business and for the future business at the same time. And that's not an easy thing to do, but it depends not on the size of your organization. Even if you with 10 people, it's absolutely possible to change in that way, and it's I would even say it's necessary these days.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only possible, but it's necessary. But everything begins with the mindset. We are not in a negative business, and I think that the opportunities were never so interesting as these days.
Right. Okay. And then earlier in the presentation, you also referenced a few slides back new duties for journalists. And I was just attending our digital media conference in Copenhagen, as were you, Luc, you were there. And one of our speakers from Extrabladet actually made a whole presentation about how your editorial department is your new salesperson. So they have their KPIs to get their stories read, and they're constantly looking at analytics. And I mean, journalists have to take on a whole lot more responsibility than maybe in the past. But can you give me some ideas or examples of what you were referring to when you said that there are new duties for journalists now?
Well, yes. Let's say 20 or 30 years ago, journalists absolutely had no idea what the audience was thinking about their daily work, and maybe once a year or 2, 3, 4 times a year they had some circulation numbers, but they had no immediate feeling of appreciation, of depreciation of their work. And now we have these big data coming up. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge opportunity. You have direct contact with your clients, and at the same time, that's the other side. On the content side, you have a lot of more information to be more relevant, I would say, as a journalist, because you are better informed. The facts are more accurate. So yes. It's true that the work of a journalist has changed, but that's in every business, I think so. Mm-hmm. So that's nothing to become depressed of, and no, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a positive outlook. Every industry is being disrupted, and that certainly doesn't exempt us. And then I had another question when we were talking about. A few slides back, you had mentioned proposing new concepts for sales, marketing, and the newsroom. Yeah. And I was wondering what resources and roles are needed to introduce that change. I mean, obviously, you need to motivate your salespeople. You said, encourage them to be active listeners and to create products that are customized for your customers. how can we get people inspired with these new concepts?
Once again, it starts with an open mind, of course, but you need to be aware that your media company as one type of client. You have not one sales client, one marketing client, one content client. There's just one client. And that's the way the client perceives it also. Is a member or is a fan of one media brand and not of 3 or 4 departments of a media company. What makes it more difficult for salespeople than before, for sure, is that it's not so, let's say it's less easier, or it's more difficult to sell creative ideas on the digital platform than it was on the print before, because you have much more possibilities. And to be client focused is of course it's more difficult than to broadcast in a certain way your sales offer. So you need other profiles, or you need to change the profiles you have to do these sales proposals in a successful way.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Luc. We do not have any more questions currently, but I encourage all of our attendees to go ahead and submit your questions offline if you have them. Also, Luc is available for on-site consulting projects, so if you're interested in getting in touch with him and learning more about what his specialties are, we can always have an off-site conference call if you're interested in bringing Luc into your media business. And also, I'll remind everybody on our webinar today that this Friday, I'll go ahead and send a top takeaways email along with the recording of this webinar. So I hope that'll be helpful for everyone. And I'll just close with thanking our audience members, of course, for joining us today. And also, I want to extend a very special thank you to Luc Rademakers. Luc, thank you so much for a fascinating presentation, and it was really insightful. And I hope this leads to strong leadership and good change processes for publishers. So yeah, Luc, if you just want to say goodbye to the audience, we'll close the webinar and make sure that yeah, your email is available to them in the takeaways email on Friday.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks to all, and thank you, Nicole, and see you later.
All right, thank you everybody for joining our WAN-IFRA webinar series, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.